In this video, we're going to talk about the different types of samples and sampling methods that we use. The first one is considered a simple random sample. This is where we chose the method in which each collection of n population items is equally likely to make up the sample. So where we're talking about population versus sample, we have a population such as the number of people in your class. And so let's say the class size is 32. That's our normal math class sizes here. And so the population we denote with a capital N. So N is 32. Well, if I take those 32 students' names, write them on a piece of paper, and put them in a hat, I'm going to get a sample, and we're going to talk about a sample size, of lowercase n. The lowercase n just indicates that it comes from a sample. And so we'll say that the sample size for this example is going to be 13. So n is 13. So what this indicates is that everyone in the class had an equally likely chance of being chosen for that 13 because I put all the names in a hat and I drew. And so this is considered a random sample. This is the most basic sampling method that we have. Now, the second type of sampling method is a sample of convenience. The sample of convenience is a sample not drawn by well-defined random methods, meaning we're not looking at everybody equally. We are looking more at who's near us. What's the easiest way? So this would be similar to just picking the front two rows. And so I'm picking the front two rows. Instead of making people come forward that aren't on those two rows, I just pick the front two rows, and that's a sample of convenience. Not very well defined, and we don't want to use this in most cases, especially when we're talking about data. The third type of method, actually the third and fourth types, are very similar. So the third type is called stratified sampling. The fourth type is called cluster sampling. So let's look at stratified sampling. The population is divided into groups, what we also call strata, and a simple random sample is drawn from each group. So let's look at, we're talking about groups, so let's just talk about if we have freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Okay. And so if I put, there's 7 freshmen, 5 sophomores, 10 juniors, and 8 seniors. These are just to show you, hey, okay, these are how many people I have. Well, for a sample like I'm discussing, and let me get a different color here, the stratified sample, what it means is I'm going to take, say, 2 freshmen, 2 sophomores, 2 juniors, and 2 seniors. I took some from each individual group. We divided them into strata, okay, freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors, and then I took a couple from every single group. This would also be like if I divided students into male and female, and I took some males, some females. Random sample from each of those. or if we divided people up by age, and then I took some from each age category. Those are stratified sampling methods. The cluster sampling method is similar to that in the fact that we still have groups, and I'm going to do the freshmen again, the sophomores, the juniors, and the seniors, and I'll have 5 freshmen, 5 sophomores, 6 juniors, and 7 seniors. Okay? The difference between stratified and clustered is clustered, what we do is we take the entire freshman group and maybe the entire senior group. We took those groups. We still divided people into groups, but we took everybody in a single group. This is like if we go through and say our groups are our classrooms, and then I take people from everybody in 2 different classrooms. That is cluster sampling. Whereas the stratified sampling is if I have people in classrooms and I go through and take some from every single classroom. Okay? So that's the difference between cluster sampling and stratified sampling. Another group that we have is the systematic sampling. And when we're talking about the systematic sampling, what we're doing is we want to place the population items in order, then select the starting item along with every kth item after that. What that means is if I have items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and we'll just start there. So I have 10 items and I've placed them in order, whether it be a line in a grocery store or the order of their last names, anything like that. I've placed them in some type of order. And then I'm going to pick every third item. Okay, so I'm going to start with number 1. So that's 1, 2, 3, third item. 1, 2, third item. 1, 2, third item. Okay, so I pick every third item. This is similar to winners at a grocery store or something like that. The 100th person in line, every 1,000th person, something like that. That is a systematic type of sampling. Okay, the last type of sampling that we're going to talk about is down here, the voluntary response sampling. Now, voluntary response is where responders have been asked to communicate their opinions, be contacted with their opinions and everything. This is often used by media to try to engage their audience. I'll be very blunt, it's not very reliable because most of the time it's the people that have the strong opinions that are going to respond. Those that, it could go either way, it doesn't really matter to me. Those are going to be the ones that don't respond. And so you're actually going to have an extreme bias with that because you're not looking at everybody. It's strictly looking at those that said, okay, I'll do this. This actually happens a lot of times with our course evaluations at the end of each semester. Not everybody does them, and so we have voluntary response sampling. I can only look at those that did respond, and most of the time it's those with very strong like or dislike. More times it's the dislike because you want something changed. Not a bad thing. You're just looking at change, where those that have a very strong like are like, well, it's already good, so why say anything? And so that is a voluntary response sampling. Like I said, not very reliable and not one that we really want to use if we're doing scientific research or anything. So study these different types of sampling. Be sure to look at the different symbols that we're using for population size and sample size. And make sure you can distinguish the difference between stratified and cluster. Let me know if you have any questions.